In this context, the Federal Reserve decided at its November meeting to undertake additional monetary policy actions to satisfy its dual mandate. After weighing carefully the uncertainties and risks, the FOMC decided to further expand the Federal Reserve's holdings of longer-term Treasury securities. The objective of this action is to reduce longer-term interest rates, thereby promoting a stronger pace of economic growth. The purchase of longer-term securities, while in some ways unconventional, is actually quite similar to the Fed's traditional approach to monetary policy, which involves lowering the overnight federal funds rate by increasing the supply of reserve balances. With the federal funds rate now effectively pinned at zero, purchases of longer-term securities are intended to push down rates further out the yield curve. By bolstering activity in the United States and mitigating risks that could threaten the recovery, this policy should also provide support for a sustained expansion in the global economy. In announcing its intention to purchase an additional $600 billion of longer-term Treasury securities, the FOMC committed to review the purchase program regularly in light of incoming information and to make adjustments as needed to meet our objectives. The committee, of course, recognizes that at the appropriate time, as the economy more fully recovers, the Federal Reserve will need to remove this extraordinary monetary accommodation in order to maintain price stability and keep inflation expectations well anchored. I'm confident that the Federal Reserve has both the commitment and the tools to achieve this unwinding. I strongly supported the Federal Reserve's recent action because I believe it will be helpful in strengthening the recovery. But it's hardly a panacea. Thus, a fiscal program that combines a focus on pro-growth policies in the near term with concrete steps to reduce longer-term budget deficits could be a valuable complement to our efforts. Indeed, some budget experts are exploring the idea of explicitly coupling fiscal stimulus in the near term when unemployment is high and resource utilization is low, with specific deficit-reducing actions that take effect at scheduled future times when output and employment are expected to have moved closer to their potential. Although a plan of this type might be challenging to develop and implement, it could prove an effective means to support economic activity in the short run while moving toward fiscal sustainability over time. Because the focus of this conference is on fiscal adjustments and the global economy, I thought I would try to place this discussion of U.S. fiscal and monetary policies into the current international context. The process of long-run fiscal consolidation in the United States would likely entail higher national saving relative to investment, which should have the direct effect of restraining U.S. imports and shrinking the U.S. trade deficit. More generally, by lowering interest rates, fiscal consolidation should diminish net capital inflows into the United States, thereby reducing the current account deficit in this country and current account surpluses elsewhere. The resulting pattern of international debt accumulation and capital flows would become more balanced than at present, promoting a more sustainable pattern of growth in the global economy. Indeed, such a rebalancing program was strongly endorsed by the leaders of the Group of 20 at their recent meeting in Seoul. Although the fiscal consolidation process is just beginning, the weakness of private demand in the United States and other advanced economies, combined with robust growth in the emerging market economies, has led to a two-speed global recovery that already is creating pressures toward rebalancing. The advanced economies started their recoveries in 2009, but economic growth has barely exceeded the growth rate of potential output. So as a result, the level of output in most advanced economies, including the United States, is still well below its potential. Forecasts suggest that growth and resource utilization will remain lackluster in the advanced economies for some time. Furthermore, inflation pressures in most other advanced economies, as in the United States, remain quite low, reflecting the existence of substantial economic slack. In contrast to the subdued pace of recovery in the advanced economies, economic activity in the emerging market economies has rebounded sharply. The level of output in most of those economies now well exceeds pre-crisis levels. The consequence is that policymakers in emerging market countries have turned their attention to the threat of rising inflation, and they've begun tightening monetary policy. The stronger growth prospects in the emerging market economies, coupled with the tightening stance of their monetary policies, appear to be contributing to a resurgence of capital inflows to these economies. Sizable differentials in expected returns between advanced and emerging market economies also seem to be reinforcing these flows and causing emerging market currencies to rise. In light of their increasing concerns about inflation, a case can be made that emerging market policymakers should welcome currency appreciation because it reduces inflation pressures and, over time, aids global rebalancing. However, some of them have argued that unduly large and rapid capital inflows may lead to asset price bubbles and expose the financial sectors in their economy to a subsequent reversal of these flows, while rapid currency appreciation could derail the growth of their export sectors. A number of emerging market economies have accordingly attempted to counter the effects of financial inflows through a range of policies, including foreign exchange intervention and capital controls. The U.S. fiscal program that I discussed earlier might also moderate the pressures emerging market economies are experiencing at present. Stronger U.S. growth would boost our demand for foreign goods and reduce the incentives for capital flows to emerging markets, thereby diminishing some of the upward pressure on emerging market currencies. Thus, the U.S. fiscal program would lessen, for a time, the natural mechanisms pushing the emerging market economies to rebalance their economies toward domestic demand, even as it helped put the global economy as a whole on more solid footing. But I want to emphasize that such developments would in no way diminish the need for rebalancing in the medium term. It's also important for both advanced and emerging market economies to begin planning now for the structural reforms that will eventually be needed to promote rebalancing. Well, let me wrap up by saying that, as I hope I've made clear, the challenge for U.S. policymakers will be to craft a strategy that puts our fiscal policy on a sustainable path in the longer term, while helping support the recovery in economic activity in the near term. These goals are challenging to achieve, but they're not inconsistent. Moreover, making progress on them would not only provide important benefits to the United States, it would also help foster a stronger world economy in the near term and a better global balance in spending, production, saving, and borrowing over time. Let me stop there, and if we have a couple of minutes, I would be happy to take a couple of questions.